So a common misconception by people who don't like to look at history, people who are either too lazy to do reading, or perhaps they've been hit by some historical facts that upset their worldview, that do not sit with them comfortably, that make them feel a little bit unpleasant. So they puff and huff and blow it off and say history is just propaganda written by the winners to make the winners look good and to shame those that they defeated. Is this a fact? Does this stand up to analysis when we look at this thought, when we look at this concept? Let's have a look. Well, throughout history, obviously, there has been a great deal of propaganda. There has been a great deal of lies. From the most ancient times, we'll see history as being recorded as glorious, noble kings smiting their enemies and defeating the wretched peoples who dared to stand in their way. Yet, is this the only history, or is this actually history? Well, let's have a look. Throughout history, there have been people who have won and people who have lost. There have been people who are winners, yet we have no recorded history of them. And there are people who won for centuries and then they were lost and they disappeared. So, history is written by historians, some of them on the winner's side, some of them on the loser's side. Let's take a few examples. The Spartans, for example, are a people who left no records of their existence on this planet. The Spartans existed, we believe, and then they ceased to exist. The evidence for their existence is very scanty, and it's all written by their enemies, or at least their opponents. Nothing of their own writings exists. Yet, we believe them. We believe in them. It has become an accepted fact that the Spartans existed, lived on this earth, and had a martial culture which was superior to the other Greek states. Another example is the Carthaginians. They were victorious for centuries. They defended their side of the Mediterranean from the Roman advance, but in the end they were washed away and defeated by the power of Rome. They left no written records of their existence. Any records we have are either from them, from their enemies, the Romans, or from archaeological evidence which is open to interpretation. So now, let's go back. Churchill, Goebbels, and others among the Nazi regime often said that history is only written by the winners. Or, as Goebbels said, the losers will be accused and the winners will accuse them. In other words, the losers will be judged by the winners. Fine, all that is fine. But if we look through history, every defeated people, with some exceptions, but many of the defeated peoples left historical records of their side of the war, their side of the battle, their side of the conflict. So if we look even at peoples like the Native Americans, like the Maori, there are records of their side of the conflict. Not as numerous as the European colonialist side, but there are records. We can look at things from their point of view. So, when we're reading history, we must differentiate between what is a historical event and what is the opinion of the historian about that historical event. For example, we might read in a book that a king chose so-and-so as his main minister. And that was the stupidest thing he could have done, and that was the reason his kingdom fell, and that led to his defeat in battlefield and his eventual execution. Okay. What have we learnt from that? What history have we learnt from that statement, from what we just said? Well, we've learnt that the king chose so-and-so as his main minister. That's it. That's all we learnt. Everything else after that is the opinion of the writer, which we can agree with or disagree with. You're welcome to have your own opinions about history, but you are not welcome to invent your own historical events. I hope you can see the difference. So when we read history, there's 4 things to look for. Number 1, what is the opinion of the writer? Where is he writing from? What standpoint is he writing from? Is he pro or is he anti the people he's writing about? And then the other two, I guess is the same one, which is, was he close to the event or was he far from the event? So the question is, did it happen? And how did his opinions, or how did the writer's opinions, taint his understanding of what happened? So if you look at the Ottoman Empire, for example, the Ottoman Empire spread and were victorious for many, many centuries. Yet, those who wrote about them during the height of their power, many of them disliked them. So, the opinions of those they defeated have been recorded and are available to those who wish to read them. So, going back to our original question, is history written by the winners only? The answer is definitely not. Is history presented in a tainted way to get a certain reaction by certain people? Definitely yes. And that is the difference between somebody who studies history and somebody who reads it in school, in high school, for a few lessons a week. Obviously, the version they present in high school must be simplified and must be acceptable to the people they are teaching. There's no harm in that. But if we wish to look into things with a little bit more detail, we've got to look at both sides of the story, or at least find a historian who is able to convince us that he is non-biased. Okay, lastly, historical opinions. You are welcome to your opinions, just as I am welcome to mine, and the other people who write history are welcome to theirs. You look into history. This is what makes it so exciting, makes it so enjoyable to study, is it's not just a list of events with a determined understanding of everything that happened. You can look at that and discover something new. Come to your own understanding. Have a look at what happened, why it happened. That is what makes things beautiful. So we must beware of studying history in retrospect. So for example, the reasons the southern states lost the American Civil War. The reasons why the southern states should have never entered the American Civil War. That's very unfair to look at now. Because at the time, they didn't know they were going to lose. And defense would have been as good as a victory for them, because they weren't invading. So if the North had failed to invade them, they would have been victorious. Just like any other historical event, which we could talk about for a long time. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you found that beneficial in one way or another. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.